Boatworks Today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexial Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. So welcome back to the shop, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Now, for this video, I want to go through the process that I've kind of refined over the years on how to go about getting a surface faired out in the most efficient way. Now, I'm going to be doing this as prep for eventually painting, but I'm going to go through all the steps to get up to that point. Now, there are some little subtle details kind of here and there, so pay close attention and you might pick up a trick or two. Let's get started. Now, the reason I coated this was to make the whole thing uniform in appearance. And that does a couple of things. I mean, for one, it makes it so much easier to find or to see the imperfections. And there are definitely some imperfections, namely pinholes. They're kind of peppered around all over. But when I was doing my, before I applied this primer last night, I did not see any of this. I mean, this one I did, I guess, but none of these little pinholes I could see. So this just makes it a lot easier to be able to pick out and touch up. Now, the other reason that I coated this is that when I actually come in and start doing my longboarding or the sanding, any area of the surface that's been sanded is going to have a different shade or a different appearance than the areas that have not been sanded. So if I've got low spots, longboard's not going to hit the low spots, it's only going to touch the highs. It's just gonna, again, it's gonna make it a lot easier to be able to zero in on the areas that are low so that I can add a little bit more fairing to those spots. Now, speaking of longboards, this is what I'm gonna be starting with. This is the 110 electric version from FlexiSander. It's just, for right now, yes, it's technically it's fairing, but there's, I guess, what I consider to be rough fairing and then fine fairing. I'm going to use this for the rough fairing just because it's going to save a lot of wear and tear on my shoulders, and you know that's always a good thing. So then what that's going to show me is that any place where there's still primer left, those are the low spots. So those are going to be the areas that I'm going to have to come back, build up a little bit more, and then I'll come back in, and at that stage, hopefully I should be at the point where I'm doing like the fine tuning. Now for the fine tuning, I'm going to be using a much longer board. I want to say this is right around like 32, 34 inches long. Almost the full width of this transom. Now, what's kind of cool about this one is that it's got this little bar right here that can be removed, but when it's locked in, it locks this sanding pad just absolutely dead flat. But in case you need to be able to do some contouring, this can be taken out, and then now we got our flex back. But I want this thing dead flat, so I'm going to leave this little insert in place. Now, I want to mention this. I want to stress this point. You do not need to have these, I guess, these commercially made longboards. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are fantastic, and if you do a lot of it, they're well worth the investment. But for years, and 15, and well, up until I got these, which was, yeah, probably about 15 years, this was my longboard. This is just one that I made. It's a 1/4-inch piece of plywood, and I epoxied a couple makeshift handles on top, and it works great. Lot of miles on this. I think it probably took me 10 minutes to cobble it together, and I don't know, less than a couple of dollars in materials. So this is also perfectly acceptable, and it works great. It's light, you know, that's one advantage over anything commercially. This weighs nothing. I mean, maybe 1/4 pound, you know, 4, 5, 6 ounces. But these other ones, they're in the pounds, especially the electric one. So that's the plan. I'm kind of curious to see how this goes. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about. Now, everywhere that we've got bare glass, these are all high spots. So they were proud more than what they should have been, or at least they were proud compared to everything else, you know, around there. And the high spots they're just kind of peppered around, kind of randomly all over the place. Now, what's more telling is how low, or how much of this was actually low. So for example, everywhere that you see any of this gray, those are all low spots. So here we had a high spot. This one's probably really close, but you know, again, high and low. And this is right where the Armstrong bracket was mounting. So, you know, again, kind of going back, I'm glad I took it off. I didn't want to, but I'm glad I did. It's at this stage of the process here when you're doing your fairing. This is when things have a tendency to, or progress, tend to come to a bit of a screeching halt, because the fairing process is exactly that. It is a process. I mean, I could come in and have to do a rinse and repeat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. I mean, it's just one of those things. You keep on going until it's right. And there's really no telling how that's going to go. I mean, you do get a little better with it over time. You start to kind of figure out what exactly, kind of where the problem areas are going to be and what to look for and zero in on that. And you learn kind of more efficient techniques too, I guess. But this is the part where it really can try your patience. And I will say there's one other little thing that I'm going to kind of point out here. Where's a good example? All right, so this gray strip right through here, when I'm spreading this, I don't want to take my spatula and run it this way, because it's just going to follow the contour of that dip. Instead, this is a nice stiff putty knife or trowel, whatever you want to call this. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to come this way lengthwise so that the edges on here are resting on the high points. So naturally, it'll fill in that trough. Another little thing to keep focusing on, in areas like this, make sure you fill those in, otherwise you'll end up sanding far more than what you really need to. And again, up here, I'm going to run my trowel this way and not that way. It's you. This ought to be fun. Let's try and get a feel for how things are shaping up here. Now, if I can see daylight anywhere along this edge here, then I've got high spots. And I've got a high spot like right here. High spot right here. Oh, down here. All right, so I've got a gap here, but this is high. So I think by the time I take this part down, then the rest of this should fall into place. That looks dead on. That's not even close. So where's it going south? I gotta knock this down right here. Well, good morning. Let's see how everything turned out. Material set up, which is good. I was a little concerned about that. The hardener that I'm using for this primer, it's 5 years old. Now, typically Alexial has, at least they publicize, a 3-year shelf life on all their stuff. The primer base is right at 3 years, but the converter was at 5, but it's still set up twice in a row. No problems at all. Kind of looking things over here. I mean, there's, very typical things. There's usually going to be some minor pitting, nothing major. But I'm just going to go ahead and circle these real quick so they're easy to see. So now at this point, what I would normally do, given that I've got some, small little pinholes in here, is that I would take some of Alexial's fairing compound. Since we're going to be layering whatever material for the fairing, we're going to be laying on top of Alexial primer. It's always best to try and keep all the products going forward kind of within the same family. So just to ensure compatibility, what I would normally do is I'd take one of Alexial's fairing compounds and then just kind of come in and spot fill all of these small little pinholes. Now, I'm not going to do that here because honestly, I don't want to take a fairing kit out of my stock to use on a small little project like this for, just as a demonstration. Small, shameless plug. If you weren't aware, I am an Alexial retailer. Yeah, retailer, seller. I have a brick and mortar store in town, and I stock pretty much all the materials that would be applicable for DIY stuff. So it's primarily all rolling materials. I do carry some spray, but it's primarily stocked up with the rolling side of things. So, anyways, if you have a project coming up and you'd like to try out some Alexial on your boat, I will have a link for all of that down below. It's millerboatworks.com, and you can go ahead and check it out. But anyways, getting back to this, what I would normally do is I would come in, spot fill. Now, because it's been less than 24 hours since when I applied this primer, as opposed to when I would be potentially coming in and spot filling with the primer or with the fairing compound. Because it's been within that 24-hour window, I do not need to sand this. Now, if I exceed that 24-hour window, then I would need to come in and scuff. I don't really know how that would even make a difference because we're looking to fill pinholes. You can't sand inside of a pinhole. I suppose you could get in there and kind of open it up, but I've never done that and I've never had any issues. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break my own rule, but I think it'll still work perfectly fine. I've worked with other people on their projects and they've done this exact same thing. No problems. So that's what I'm going to end up doing here. But I'm going to mix up some Total Fair. And just a very small amount. I'm not going to need much to fill. I mean, literally, they're pinholes. So I'll come in and I'll spot fill that. Now, before I do so, I am going to double check to make sure that this face is actually flat on all of the different planes. So I'm going to take the Brutus, the long board here, and I'm just going to make a single swipe, in a few different directions, few different angles, and see how uniform the scratch pattern looks from side to side. I guess we'll find out soon. All right, first one, I'm just going to come right across the top. This is where the majority of all the mounting holes are. I think this is probably the line across the transom that's going to be of most importance. So let's see how things go. We got scratches all the way across. If it's not 100% dead flat, it's pretty dang close. Might be slightly light right in here, but I'm still making contact. So I'm gonna call that one a pass. Next one, I'm gonna come down and check this angle here. Now I know that there is a hump dead center, so a little light here and here, but there's still scratch patterns. So I'm still gonna run with that one, say it's good enough. And lastly, this row right here. Very consistent. And I'll zoom in here in a second here and let you get a little better look. Same thing on this side right here. Pretty consistent, top to bottom. Slightly light here, but there's still a scratch pattern visible. Try right down the center here. A little light right here, but this is where that hump is. And I don't want to remove too much of that material, so I don't know. I'm gonna think on this one. What I'll probably end up doing is when I dry fit the bracket back on here, before I smear a bunch of caulking and stuff on here, I'll do a dry fit just to make sure that tolerances are right where they need to be. If it needs a little bit of TLC, I suppose I can come in and do a little additional fairing here to kind of build it up, but I think it's probably going to be fine. And then lastly, this little patch right here. Pretty consistent. And again, until we got down to this patch, or to this bulge, I guess. I think we're in good shape. Yay. Ugh. So again, here it looked pretty good. A little slightly light here and here, but there are still some scratch patterns visible. Across the top, all this looks great. Down along this port side here, and again, slightly light in through here, but I think that'll work out just fine. Down along the bottom, good surface contact. Same over there, and then right down the center, good surface contact until I got to here. And again, this is that where it's kind of bumped or bulged out a little bit. Oh, some more pinholes that I missed. Oops. Now here at this stage, I'm not looking to get any build whatsoever. All I want to do is strictly fill these pinholes. So I'm going to kind of scrape them flush. It is helpful to come at when you're trying to fill something small like this. Come at it from a few different directions. Just good practice. So now at this point, what I would do is I would let this, this epoxy filler for the pinholes, I would let that sit at least overnight. A day and a half, maybe even 2 days would be better, but overnight would be perfectly fine as well. Now, because we just applied some fairing over top of this primer, after this is all sanded down, I would do the sanding with 120 grit. Sand everything down, remove all of the excess fairing compound that we just laid up, and then I would roll out 3 more coats of primer over 3 consecutive days. And as long as you apply each coat within 24 hours of the previous, no sanding is required. So that's kind of the beauty of being able to stay on top of a project for consecutive days. At that point, then the last thing I would do is I would let it cure for probably a day at least, preferably 2, possibly 3. And then as prep for the paint, then those primer coats would be sanded with 320, clean it, and then you are officially ready to switch gears and start putting on some color. But I'm not at that point for this quite yet. So for right now, I'm gonna button this project up right here and call it a day. So as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you in advance. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those down below. I will do my best to follow up with you. And as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you next video, next week. Toodles.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.